With more voters seemingly unhappy with the nominees for president from both the mainstream parties once again, the possibility for a prominent third-party candidate should seem pretty high. Unfortunately, back in 2016, neither Gary Johnson nor Jill Stein managed to receive at least 5% of the popular vote needed to receive federal funding in 2020. This, however, has made me wonder, what if a prominent political figure did run as an independent candidate, more specifically, Bernie Sanders? Keep in mind, Bernie Sanders has already stated in 2015 that he would not run as a third-party candidate after losing to Hillary Clinton.
If they called upon you, would you run as an independent?
No. The answer is no.
Not to mention, in 2019, he also signed a loyalty pledge to the Democrat Party. With that said, this scenario is impossible. However, as a purely hypothetical question, what would happen if Bernie Sanders ran as a third party, or more specifically, an independent candidate? As already stated, in this scenario, we are assuming Sanders runs as an independent and is not affiliated with a third party. Sanders, in this scenario, has never signed a pledge and has decided that he was tired of being associated with a political party once and for all and has gone back to his roots of being an independent. In April 2020, Sanders takes his diehard supporters and launches the largest independent presidential campaign since Ross Perot in 1992. Luckily for Sanders, he'll be able to take any money he had raised while running as a Democrat and use it for his independent run. However, due to him not having the backing of the party and not taking donations from corporations and billionaires, he will not have near as much financial support that Trump and Biden will have going into November. Assuming Sanders is in it to win it, he would need to be on the ballot in all 50 states, and if not, at least enough states to get him to at least 270 electoral votes. Since Sanders originally was running for Democrat nominations, he is barred from running in 2 states that have sore loser laws for their presidential ticket. States that have sore loser laws against presidential candidates are South Dakota and Texas, which means that Bernie Sanders is out 41 electoral votes, now giving him 497 out of 538 potential electoral votes. Something to keep in mind is that each state has specific deadlines for independent runs. Since Sanders is starting his campaign in April in this scenario, this means that he cannot have ballot access in North Carolina due to its deadline being back in March. With all this said, assuming Sanders meets all requirements for the rest of the states plus DC, he will have access to a total of 482 electoral votes. When it comes to campaigning, Sanders is likely to only campaign in blue states as displayed here. One, and perhaps the only state he would certainly win, is Vermont, given the fact that in 2016 there was a write-in campaign in Vermont that gave him almost 6% of popular votes in the state. However, it would be an uphill battle for Sanders anywhere else. Though Sanders would win the progressive vote, especially since several of his supporters have expressed frustration over Biden as the Democrat nominee, and some even saying they wouldn't vote at all because of it, the fear of voting for a third party and spoiling the election is very real to a lot of voters. Not to mention, moderate Democrats might see Sanders as too far left. Something that would help Bernie Sanders tremendously is if he was able to make it into the debates. However, he would have to meet the Commission on Presidential Debates requirements, which are as stated. 1. Be constitutionally eligible to hold the office of President of the United States. 2. Appear on a sufficient number of state ballots to have a mathematical chance of winning a majority vote in the Electoral College. 3. Have a level of support of at least 15% of the nationwide electorate, as determined by 5 national public polling organizations using the averages of those organizations' most recently publicly reported results at the time of determination. If Sanders is able to meet these requirements, being in the debates will be a huge boost to his campaign, and given his popularity and ability to raise money, it may very well be possible that Sanders would pull off garnering 15% in nationwide polling. Now, for the first time since 1992, an independent candidate for president gets to participate in the debates. During the debates, Trump insults Biden, saying that he is too old and feeble for the job, while calling Bernie Sanders a radical commie. Biden would struggle to speak coherently, while Sanders would mostly be blaming Trump for being a fascist and Biden too conservative and cozy around big corporations and billionaires. Finally, after months of vigorous campaigning from all the candidates, November 3rd arrives. With all of what I just stated in consideration, here is how I personally think the election would go down. Okay, so starting off, every state that Trump won in 2016 by 10 points or more is going to go to him, and I will give Biden all the states that Clinton won by at least 10 points in 2016. I do think that some New England states would be closer this time around, however Sanders, in my opinion, simply wouldn't be able to gain enough votes in these areas to secure a victory in states that Clinton carried by at least 10% in 2016. So the only state that I'm going to be giving to Bernie Sanders is Vermont, mostly because back in 2016 there was a very successful write-in campaign. He got almost 6% of the vote, not to mention I think he's popular enough in the state to receive its 3 electoral votes. 2 states I want to first get out of the way are Delaware and New Jersey. Delaware is still going to go for Biden. Biden is very well known in the state, and Sanders does not have what it takes, in my opinion, to win enough votes to either win the state or give it to Trump. I'm also going to give Joe Biden New Jersey. I don't think he'll take the state by too large a margin. However, given Trump's low approval rating in the state, it's not likely the state will be nearly as close as in 2016, meaning that even if Sanders carries a lot of votes, I don't think it will be enough. Since Sanders is running as an independent, Trump would no doubt carry the states of Iowa, Ohio, and Georgia. Not only did he carry these states by at least comfortable margins in 2016, but if Sanders running as an independent would only solidify Trump's victories here. North Carolina and Florida are a little more interesting though. Though Biden is leading Trump in polls by decent margins in these states, and the fact that Sanders performed poorly in these states during the 2020 Democratic primaries, I think that Sanders would bleed off enough votes to give Trump the victory in these 2 battleground states. Virginia would still go to Biden. Democrats in the state tend to lean more moderate, and the primaries was a display of their rejection to Bernie Sanders given the fact that he only won a single county in the state. I think Trump would carry New Hampshire mainly because New Hampshire is practically Sanders' backyard, and not to mention that he beat Biden by a considerable number of votes in the New Hampshire primaries. Now, Maine is interesting. In 2016, Trump not only almost won the state, but also won in Maine's 2nd congressional district. Given how close it was in 2016 and Sanders' popularity, I personally think that Sanders would split votes from Biden to give Trump the entirety of Maine. I think Arizona would go to Trump in this scenario. The fact it looks to be a close race right now without a prominent independent/third-party candidate, I think Sanders would solidify a Trump victory in this state. I'm also going to say that Trump barely picks up Colorado. Sanders seems to be very well liked in the state, and a considerable number of Coloradans actually voted for a third-party candidate in 2016. I'm going to give Trump Nevada as well. This was a state that Hillary Clinton did not win by much in 2016, and given how many people voted for Sanders in the primary in the state, I do not see it unlikely for Trump to win Nevada in this scenario. I have a hard time deciding how New Mexico might turn out in a scenario like this, and honestly, I'm going to say that Biden barely holds on to the state. Sure, Clinton did not win by a huge margin in 2016, however, after 4 years of Donald Trump, it looks as if New Mexico has grown increasingly against President Trump. Not much data surrounding this, is more of a gut feeling, but I'm pretty sure that Biden would just barely hold on to the state. Lastly, I predict that Trump will win Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Bernie Sanders would likely bleed off a lot of working class voters from Biden. Lots of working class voters would look at Sanders and likely see him as a good alternative to Biden, therefore making these states difficult for him to win. So this is my final prediction, with Trump at 338 electoral votes, Biden at 197, and Sanders at 3 electoral votes.